The grand finale of Season 7 is really awesome, classic, and satisfying. The episode starts and immediately surprises everyone. It's about the grandfather and they encounter a human male who claims to be an expert in fear. He asks if the most terrifying thing is on Earth. Do you have any interest in facing it? Both the grandfather and grandson are curious, but they are just led to a Denny's restaurant. Similar to the old man's favorite Schmenny's. Both are real restaurant chains in the United States. And fear has nothing to do with it. Then Rick realizes, you're trying to hitch a ride, aren't you? Looks like everyone is here. The grandfather and grandson decide to grab a bite, but the waiter informs them that the hole they're looking for is in the men's restroom. In the men's restroom. With that said, the atmosphere suddenly changes. Silent Hill, Resident Evil, and other restroom horror adventures. Essential elements of horror. And in the last stall, they see the hole. There's also hair and an old projector. Silent Hill vibes. The rules of this terrifying adventure are simple. Jump in. Face your innermost fears. Conquer them. Climb out and put a photo on the wall. Rick immediately expresses disdain, saying, if I could be cured of inner terror by a hole. He turns around to go eat, without any hesitation. My brother also wants to act cool. Indeed. Let's go, Hiroshi. See you in the next second. The grandson is too curious, can't resist, and goes in. Facing an indescribable monster trying to fill his stomach with maggots. Rick definitely can't abandon his grandson, so he shoots. But Dennis responds with a what if the firepower is insufficient? Are you afraid? However, true to the old man, without a gun, it's close combat, tearing the boss apart. He takes Morty with him, takes a photo, and heads home. All in one go. That's how strong it is. Bass asks. Lao Wei says, the taste of overcoming fear. It's a waste that we were both scared shitless. And at this moment, young Rick hugs Diane tightly. He says, I rushed over to protect her, but I got blown up. I'll leave my wife to you. Diane appears, but the main character Rick instantly realizes. He mutters, we're still in that hole, aren't we? Making friends with the abyss. I think you're right. From here on, the plot gets more complicated. Let's elaborate on each change in the situation. Serious analysis at the beginning unanimously believed that losing Diane was Rick's greatest fear. So the hole created an illusion. But the purpose was overthought a bit. Is it just a coincidence? The idea is, if there really is some parallel universe where Rick successfully saves his wife, and this wife is not erased by the Omega device, how will the old you cope? But if this Diane is a real person, it must involve time travel. This field, Rick doesn't like to touch it. Moreover, for D beings will come to stop it. So the old man firmly believes that everything is a dynamic virtual image. Might as well enjoy it while you can. First, make yourself young. Rekindle the old flame with fake Beth. But Diane is very dissatisfied with this, directly scolding, my husband is dead. You're not qualified to wear his face. Then Grandma looks at Beth, instantly realizing, what about my real daughter? Did she survive? But the protagonist, Rick says, boldly declares, I'm because none of you really exist. The present-day Rick has been through a lot, becoming somewhat nihilistic, seeing the indifference of the older self. So ruthless. His words lack tenderness. It's unbearable. Crucially, I don't know how you became like this, but I don't fancy this version of you. It really stings. Grandpa has something to say. Just because he loves you too much. It's because of my deep love for you that I ended up like this after you passed away. Grandma sleeps in Jerry's bed. The couple, after finally reuniting, as a result, Morty draws a conclusion. Grandpa, that's what you fear most. Even if given another chance, you still can't be with Grandma Diane, right? So-called things change. People change. That gentleman who was once willing to give up science is no longer here. But if this idea holds true, it raises another question. What fear does the old man have to overcome now that we know what Morty fears? Rick proposes an interesting idea, saying, grandson, are you also afraid of Grandma Diane? Are you afraid of her coming back? If I don't adventure with you anymore, that's fine with me. Ignoring the grandson's displeasure. Who cares about adventuring with you? Putting the storyline in the nether aside for now. Let's talk about Rick's plan. The old man doesn't admit that what he fears is the inability to win the heart of an adult. So the next day, he goes all out to welcome back his wife. He creates a robot, delivering breakfast to the young wife, while singing. And here it is mentioned, to prove that he is Diane's husband. Rick used the parts he used to make drones for the government, to make the robot's arm. Diane recognizes this arm, and the couple first met because of the drone. There's a lot of information here. In short, when the old man met Diane making law enforcement machines for the government, Grandma's identity seems for the song the robot sings. Let's translate it. Just go with the flow for the sake of restoration. Sing you. Good morning, young dad. Presenting you this rumor. I know you had a bad mood yesterday. Rick also copied you. Grandpa wants to pour money for you, so he made me. Presenting you with food and drinks. May you be in a good mood. I once burst into tears for myself. These memories make me linger and won't fade. Cry until you're tired. Check the original for the last line. Except for the last sentence. Every line before matches. It's quite surprising. Rick made the robot to intelligence, so he has the memories of a human child. And this arm also stirs Grandma's memories of her first meeting with Grandpa. The family happily goes to the zoo. During the conversation, young Diane was also a high achiever. Her research paper from her graduate years discussed the intelligence of human beings. Rick read this paper after his wife's death and invented a drug that allows animals to speak. However, the result was exceptionally comical. Rick seems to reminisce about his wife a lot after her death, and the love is indeed deep. Now the two share a deep connection and are happily back together. The grandson's expression on the side is quite similar. This is awkward. The couple then goes about various drinks and conversation. The love is indeed deep, and the young grandma is indeed outstanding. Now the two share a deep connection and happily reunite. The grandson's expression on the side is quite similar. This is awkward. The couple then goes to enjoy their drinks and conversation, drinking everyone else under the table. It turns out that young Rick couldn't hold his liquor, while Diane could handle it exceptionally well. Rick's ability to drink came later as a result of heartbreak. Young Diane had a cheerful personality. During her high academic attitude toward life was live, and no wonder she and Rick make a perfect match. But Morty on the side continues to be annoyed after the old couple becomes even sweeter. They even come up with a phrase, "When I drink until I vomit. Please help me lift my long hair." Rick speaks from the heart, saying that his grandson believes his greatest fear is never being able to let go of him. And I think he's right. Everyone responds, "Then don't let go. You and I will be together forever." This couple, after many years, finally kisses. And the camera shifts to the nether, where Morty just laughs this time. Rick chooses to be with Diane forever, but his expression becomes increasingly difficult. Seeing this, Morty quickly draws a conclusion that the hole is feeding on Rick. And as long as the old man doesn't get out, he'll be drained of his life force. And seeing Rick die in front of him is probably the scariest thing for Morty. But Rick can't hear a word of it. He and Diane are flying together. Ignoring Morty's concerns, Rick is oblivious to the fact that Morty is worried. Morty goes back to the restaurant alone to consult the expert on horror. He doesn't bother pretending anymore, directly stating that Rick's fear is too delicious, and he won't let him leave alive. And Morty, don't think about leaving because if you leave, Rick will most likely return to reality with you. Let's delve into this conversation. The man gives a definite answer, saying that what Rick fears is actually admitting the true existence of happiness. It means that Morty, as his grandson, is still young and can easily feel joy from small things around him. But Rick has experienced too much, and he's too intelligent. He believes that true happiness doesn't exist in the world. What exists is just the fleeting illusion given by joy, because separation and death are inevitable. Once you start a relationship, it inevitably means ending in tragedy, echoing the idea that love is a grave. Even if love is true and deep, it can easily be disrupted by an accident, an illness, or an event. Even if one person is extremely good to another, truly making them happy for a lifetime, with unparalleled loyalty and devotion, still a lie, because it truly can't last a lifetime. Either he goes first, leaving behind someone who hasn't loved enough, or you go first, leaving behind someone who is saddened by your loss. The best happiness is nothing more than death on the same day, month, and year. Rick will never believe that true happiness exists, and as long as he doesn't believe it, he can't overcome this fear. Morty's understanding of his grandfather's fear is correct. Morty thinks the man is right. That's since Rick can't break free on his own. He must rely on Morty to break the shackles. What a simpleton grandson. To overcome his fear, he allows a giant spider to crawl on him, and ultimately he swallows it. But this doesn't count as conquering fear. It just leaves Jerry beside him dumbfounded. He says, "Son, are you okay? I don't dare to acknowledge you looking like this." But as soon as these words are spoken, begins to shake. Morty suddenly realizes that his greatest fear is not being recognized or accepted. He doesn't care anymore, and acts crazily in front of classmates and strangers alike. If you look closely, after the Nether intervenes, only Jessica shows concern with a difficult expression. Only Jessica shows concern with a difficult expression. This pair is quite heartwarming. Don't forget, everything is a simulated illusion created by the whole. In order to overcome the fear of embarrassment, he even performs in public with his bare buttocks. He goes to such lengths to save Grandpa. And this bold behavior makes the whole more focused on the Nether. This causes glitches and errors on Rick's side, making it impossible for him to communicate normally with the old man. Initially, Rick was quite angry, but when he ran over and saw, he instantly felt uneasy. His grandson, to save him, is willing to make a fool of himself in public? Rick also strips naked, grabs a washcloth with Morty, and they fly across the screen. The duo's adventures continue, with some rap and lively performances. The audience is infected by this carefree Morty is no longer afraid of embarrassment. And Rick, having such a great grandson, feels genuine happiness. Both overcome their fears and wave goodbye to Diane. Finally, they return to reality. However, Rick is still reluctant to leave. Rick is still deeply attached. He looks back into the hole, and it seems that this episode is about to end sadly. Morty mutters to Rick, "I'm afraid it's because of my choices that we left Grandma." Seeing Rick so upset, Morty says, "I can still be afraid. Doesn't that mean we haven't really moved on?" Rick responds, "Oh, you might be right, which worries me, because it means you're faster than me. This is very worrying. Everything is indeed a simulation within the hole." Rick asks Morty critically to think carefully about whether there's anything left to fear. Morty, feeling defensive, says, "I've put in so much effort, and you're still criticizing Rick retorts, me. I'm afraid you're just being stubborn, refusing to admit that you still have fears." Upon hearing this, Rick exclaims, "Say the F word? My grandson can't take it." He quickly jokes, "Okay, let's get going. Keep it stupid." As Rick walks past the dining table, he notices that a slice of bacon is priced at $8. He remarks on the alarming prices. Soon, the duo realizes something is amiss. Their internal terror now stems from fearing that they might still be inside the hole. To overcome this psychological barrier, the duo decides not to worry anymore. They choose to live their own lives carefree, without dwelling on the constant doubts. Initially, it may be difficult, and they occasionally find themselves lost in thought, wondering if everything is still just an illusion. But life goes on. Relationships continue. Adventures persist. As time passes and trivialities accumulate, the animals gradually fade from memory. Yes, next, we enter the final chapter of Rick and Morty. All the stories will converge here. Morty grows up and graduates. He turns 21 and can legally share a drink. He moves out of his parents' home. And the Smith residence is finally sold. The most familiar place changes ownership. Beth even gets married. Both mothers have visibly aged. Rick, now elderly, struggles with breathing without relying on medication. Morty works, buys a house, but faces challenges in his career, feeling a bit disheartened. Nothing is eternal, and risks are inherent. This is their adventure. That night, Morty is brushing his teeth and looks into the mirror. Haha. Here, it is considered the funniest Morty still has in season 7. He fears that everything is still an illusion. He's afraid of becoming his loser dad. He's afraid he might eventually become his loser dad. Jerry Smith's bloodline is indeed strong. The two children with the old man's genes might actually end up looking like Jerry. After being trapped for so many years, Morty is finally awakened. He just can't take it anymore. But Rick is there cheering him on, saying it will be okay, that it will pass. With Grandpa here, we'll keep adventuring forever. Just because he said this, Morty suddenly feels something is off. He suddenly realizes, did Grandpa ever come down? Was everything with Diane just his fear-induced illusion? Initially, Rick never intended to come and save him. This is what Morty fears the most. That Rick doesn't care. That he doesn't want him as his grandson. However, in reality, although Grandpa didn't come down to the hole to save Morty, he still cared and squatted outside the hole to stay alive, surviving because the hole can only be used by one person at a time. While Morty spent so much time in the illusion, in reality, only a short time passed. Rick didn't eat anything. He was just watching his grandson. This also indirectly reflects that Morty really understands Rick, because his fear story was so real, created so many illusions, and yet so reasonable. Morty knows what Grandpa fears, and what Rick says. If it sounds a little weird, his grandson can sense it. It's really been through so much. Now, it's Rick's turn to be curious and want to go into the hole, but Morty advises him not to. Please trust me. There's Diane inside. You wouldn't want to try it? Of course, Grandpa is cool, and he agrees and says, let's go. But in the next second, he does. However, in the face of a difficult choice, Grandpa makes a quite touching move. If he had to choose between an endlessly beautiful past and a present filled with too much pain, between Diane and his accompanying grandson, Grandpa ultimately chooses his wallet with a photo of his grandson in it. He doesn't go down, but instead, he helps his grandson commemorate his photo on the wall. This is the conclusion of Season 7. No grand spectacle, but it's particularly heart-wrenching, because in the calmest and most genuine way, he recounts the decade from 2013 to 2023. That Rick and Morty's adventure continues. 10 years have passed, and Rick and Morty's adventure is still ongoing. The final scene is a bit like the main storyline, where Poopy Boothel, in episode 7-1, steals Grandpa's portable gun. Now he's in some parallel universe, replacing a Poopy Boothel who is still with his wife. But at this moment, the wife shows a strange expression. It's unclear if she's planning something, or if she's discovered the discrepancies. Anyway, the story will definitely continue. It seems to hint at changes in the storyline. Thank you, everyone, for accompanying us this year. This year also included predictions for 10 episodes. Although most were wrong, the 10 plot analyses were on point. Tomorrow night, there will be the 10th Easter egg compilation. I don't want this adventure to end, but it's indeed satisfying. The feast will continue next year. Thank you for watching. See you next time. The saying goes, thank you for your viewership. Until next time, and as always, don't be a stranger. See you in the next episode.